Well, okay. Well, Michelle, everybody knows Michelle, and Michelle knows everybody. So I don't think she needs any introduction. So go ahead, take it away, Michelle.
Okay, good morning, everybody. Thank you for attending. One thing I want to mention before we get started is at 2 o'clock, if there's any agents that need to practice writing an offer, we'll be handwriting one. I'll be your buyer. I'll put the my offer up on the board, and then I'll have the agents write it. So if anybody's still has questions on the offer form, you can attend that meeting today at 2. For newer agents, it may be good for you, or if you just want to refresh, go ahead and step in. We'll do everything we can to help you get rolling if you're new, or refresh agents that have been here a while. So let's get started on the most exciting document, the listing agreement. So there's going to be forms that automatically populate with the listing agreement that we're pretty familiar with. So disclosure regarding real estate agency, we must attach this. It tells the duties of the seller agent and the buyer's agent, and also dual. So please make sure that this is always attached. You're going to check the seller, have them sign and date it the same date and the same time that you get the listing agreement signed. Please don't have this afterwards. Let's get it done the same day. Very important to do that the same day. You're going to have our brokers and your own DRE here. Most of us are pretty familiar with this, but just make sure that you get this signed at the same time you're presenting that listing agreement for your client to sign. And this section here, if you want to ever take it home and read it, it explains the civil code sections that this pertains to. Okay, so there's nothing to do here on this one other than it's something to read and to give a copy to your seller. So these forms automatically populate. We went over these in our disclosure meeting, but fair housing and discrimination advisory, make sure that you are getting this signed with your listing agreement. And it says protected classes and characteristics. If you've never read it, right here, it says what the protected classes are. So really, everybody's welcome to look at the property and make offers. So, we don't notice any of these other things. We just are marketing and selling the property. So make sure that you're getting this signed by your seller right down here at the time of the listing. Now, when you get offers, the buyer's agent should be submitting you their buyer signed form. If they don't, go ahead and send the one you got signed by the seller and ask them to sign it. Okay, you can match up the two signatures. If the buyer's agent sent you one and we have one, that's perfectly okay to keep those in your file and load 2 of them up into SkySlope. Okay, so possible representation of more than one buyer or seller. Let's get this signed at the beginning. It's important. It tells the seller that we may be dual agency, and we hope so because we have a lot of agents here. So we hope that one of our agents is able to sell our listing. So make sure this is signed up ahead of time. Make sure you're signing where you need to be signing down here, agents, and date it. For my preferences, I prefer that all of these are submitted just as they come out in the package with the listing and the dates match on signature, the same date that Mickey Moore signed it. Okay, our seller, excuse me. Wire fraud, very important. Make sure that this is also signed the same day for the seller. And now we're going to get into the residential listing agreement, a very exciting document. So let's see. So date prepared just means the date that I'm typing this. It doesn't necessarily mean it's the beginning date of the listing period, but in this case, I've typed the same date. So Mickey is giving us the exclusive right to sell and grants it to Coldwell Banker George Realty. The beginning date of this listing will be 5/20. Maybe you want a different date, But if I'm sitting in front of them, I'm going to put the date on there because I want to make sure that nobody else gets in. I want to get it signed. So if I'm sitting there at a meeting with them and going over comparables and all of that, I want to put that date there. And we'll talk later in the contract if you can't get it on the market right away due to you need to get your photographer out there. So we'll show you how to handle that. So if you can, do your best to get a 6-month listing. I always have it pre-typed in as 6 months. There's 10 days left here, so just take it out 6 months from June 1st. Do your best to get 6 months because even though houses are flying, you still want to give yourself time in case there's any further adjustments in rates or it just one fell out of escrow. You want to give yourself time to get that property sold so you can earn your commission. So you list the address here. It's situated in Alhambra, Los Angeles County, the zip code and the assessor's parcel number. Now, what's nice is the listing agreement is also covering other types of properties. So if you're selling a mobile home, you check this box and you'll see up here, it's showing that it populates with that. In our case, for our presentation, we're selling an SFR, but this same document is used for mobile home. If you're selling a property that is sold as part of a probate, conservatorship, guardianship, or receivership, the probate listing addendum is going to automatically populate once you check this box. So it's nice that they're making these forms usable for other types of properties so that we learn one form and then we can use this. So the listing price, go ahead and insert it here. Listing terms, I usually have it blank, but if there's something special that the seller already told you, go ahead and insert that here. You can take your listing age, put the percent in for your compensation at 6%. Realizing that you may have to negotiate, try to get your 6%, but let's say, you went back and forth with them and showed all that we have to offer, like advertising in the newspaper. It flows to several websites on the internet, the property does. We're going to do a professional brochure. We have the World Journal, Los Angeles Times. So we're going to tell them what we do for them to earn that commission and also explain that we're also going to be taking care of paying a buyer's agent should that be necessary. Okay. If you're not double ending it, you'll be paying another agent. So on this period, on number 2, I always put a year, 365 calendar days. So what that means is that if after the end of the listing period or any extension, so the end of this period is November 30th, after any cancellation, unless otherwise agreed, that the seller entered into a contract with a person or prospective buyer or entity who physically entered and we showed the property to, we as the listing agent, then we could be entitled to our compensation. So I don't recommend you leave this blank. I've seen that sometimes, but some people only put 180 calendar days. I tend to take out a whole year. It's just been a habit. So I always put a year there. Okay. So make sure that this is not left blank. Put some days in there, a minimum of 6 months, please, just to protect yourself, just in case. Okay. So on C, in addition, the seller agrees to pay the broker. Here you can put the, let me type it in. I should have pre-done that, $295 CBGR compliance fee. So you could put that there, okay? So here it's talking about the seller has been advised of the broker's policy regarding cooperation with amount offered and compensated to other brokers that are participating in the MLS. Here, if you have a 6% listing, maybe you only want to do 2.5. This is for like a set amount. You wouldn't have both of these, but let's say You were only offering 10,000 on the commission. I normally don't do that, and I haven't seen that done a lot at Coldwell Banker George, so it's usually a percentage. But don't feel bad if you have a 6% listing offering 2.5, you can go ahead and do that, okay? Out to the outside. Seller represents that seller has not previously entered into a listing agreement with another broker regarding the property unless specified as follows. So if that's the case, you would have to fill that in here. And the seller is also warrants that they have no obligation to pay commission to any other broker unless it's listed here. So if these boxes are filled in, it's probably not a good thing. I have never in my close to 20 years had these boxes filled in. So it should be free and clear for you to take the listing. Okay, and then if the property is sold to anyone listed above during the time the seller is obligated to compensate another broker, let's say the broker, it was an expired listing, maybe they're going to write in Kelly Drake, maybe there's a couple of buyers. So just be very cognizant of that. So if they're excluding those buyers, that means that the other agent that had this listing has excluded those buyers and there may be a claim. So just be careful on that. And ask the seller when you're taking the listing, is there any other agent that has any claim to any commission? Okay, so here is pretty important. Items excluded and excluded. What I have seen in the excluded, sometimes people have purchased these, oh gosh, thousands of dollars of chandelier. So it's probably best if they take it out of the property before it starts being shown. But if they can't and they want to leave it because it enhances the entryway of their property inside, then they can leave it, but make sure that it's stipulated here that that's excluded. Not only that, make sure that you are being very mindful to then include that in the agent comments on the MLS once it's published. So if you have something precious that the seller wants to keep, even though it's affixed, you need to exclude it and make sure that the other people understand that right up the bat. So that exclusion should be typed here, and you also need to follow up when you have your MLS input form completed. Make sure in the agent comments you're mentioning your excluded items so there's no dispute later. Additional items included. If there was something that the seller wanted to leave, like I saw a house where they had a dining room table that was seated 20 people and it was made it specifically for that house, you could put the dining room table in the, in the house with 10 chairs. But anything that they're going to include that looks like personal property, make sure you're putting it here, again, mentioning it in the other comments, because sometimes, like even when the seller wants to include a refrigerator, maybe the new buyer thinks it's too old and they don't want to deal with, and we just had a case like this with having to remove that refrigerator. So they asked in writing that that be removed from the property. So you'll want to know ahead of time, ahead of closing, if it, and everybody should be transparent and communicating. If they don't want that refrigerator left, because it's old and doesn't look nice, then make sure agents, buyer side and seller side, that you have included it. And agents, if you don't want it excluded on your offer, don't check the box to include the refrigerator or whatever else. Liened or not owned items. This is extremely important now because we're seeing a lot of properties that have solar power systems that are leased and not owned, water softener, and also just ran into this alarm systems that the alarm company has placed on a property, but the seller doesn't own them. They just pay the monthly fee. So when you know a house, and I actually did just run into this last week. So when you see a house with an alarm system, don't assume that that's a full out owned alarm system. Make sure you're asking the seller, do you own that? Will that be removed? and make sure, because there's probably a contract on it that the new buyer, if they wanted, could assume. But make sure if they own that alarm system or it's leased. On the solar system, the liened items have been financed and a lien has been placed on the property. So solar power system, if they are financing that, is always going to show up on the title report, at least it should. So make sure that if that's the case, that you already have the contract in hand to show the other side when they're making an offer. I'm more about letting them know ahead of time. I know some people's strategy is not to let them know ahead of time, but I put it all out there because if the solar system that the seller is expecting them to assume is gonna, cause an issue, we need to know right away. So make sure that you have the copy of the contracts. So we belong to the multiple listing service, and we do put the property in the multiple listing service. We belong to CR MLS. We have a lot of cooperating MLS properties. I know one of our agents is listing a property in Sunnyvale. So I called the board up there and they do cooperate with us, and they will automatically flow that property into the Sunnyvale area MLS up there and give us a printout. So if this is a good thing to know, because we're saying here that, like, let's say this was Sunnyvale, we belong to CR MLS. It is not the primary MLS, but we already know because we've made a call ahead of time of this listing and we can share this. So we're in a strong position that we have a cooperation with that MLS. If we don't, there's probably a way for the agent to join for briefly. So that's something you need to address with the MLSs, and that's just if you're selling out of the area. So make sure you're doing that. We just work with an agent. He was on top of this game and we checked, and sure enough, they were cooperating with CR MLS. So number 6, the benefits of using the MLS and impact of opting out of the MLS. We recommend to everybody that they should be full on in the MLS. We want to expose that property. We want to get boots in. We want to get all the interested buyers and agents into that property that we can. So the seller, excuse me, initials here, and the agent initials. Now that's not that they're opting out. It's just we are explaining the benefits of using the MLS to them. So make sure they initial, and not, the broker can initial if you're a broker, but also agents. Sometimes agents think it means the broker. No, this is for your initials. So make sure that you are initialing here as well. When you go to the listing agreement, it's good to have all of your initials and signatures already on the contract, so you can just go through and help them sign it. So you need to submit the MLS submission onto the MLS within 1 business day of any public marketing. So if you're doing a coming soon status, make sure you're talking to us, because those can be tricky, and you don't want to have a violation. You can't really show the property or take offers during that time. So be very careful about using coming soon. Now, sometimes when you take a listing, this is what I was talking about at the top of the agreement. Like, I know for us, we have a professional photographer. So we need time to get him out there, get him to draw our floor plans, take our aerial and still shots. So maybe we don't have time to get it on the market today because we need to have him out there. So if you are going to not start marketing the property a day later, please make sure you filled out a date. And you're also, the MLS may require SELM form or local equivalent form. That's just saying that the seller has instructed you to put it on the market at this date. Now, if you do submit an SELM to us for our system, which we would appreciate, make sure that the broker has also signed that, okay? So this is perfectly okay, because if I take a listing today, I don't have my pictures or my floor plan or anything. So make sure that you're putting in the date that you will be jumping on the market right in the listing agreement. And this would be really hard unless, you know, the seller really insists that the seller instructs the broker not to market the property to the public. So make sure that if they've instructed you that, you check it. I hope that doesn't happen to people. Okay. So the MLS rules allow the MLS data to be made available by the MLS to additional internet sites. So I know we get calls after the close of property about sites on the internet. It could be other brokerages still showing that the property is with all the pictures and things like that. So if that happens, then the seller or the buyer who's ever calling you needs to call those sites themselves. Neither the broker nor the MLS right here may have the ability to control or block such features on the MLS, on the internet sites, excuse me. So if they're calling you, there's not a lot that we can do about it. That does flow to the internet. So make sure that if they are calling you, or, you know, that they understand they can call. Now, if they're going to opt out and elects to opt out of certain internet features, check this box, and you'll also need to fill out the SELA form. Okay, so on your MLS input form at the bottom, you may have noticed there's boxes that you checked where it's yes, 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 4 questions where you want it to hit the internet. So if they're opting out of that, we wouldn't be checking that on the input form. So I would say most 99% of the people are not going to opt out of hitting the internet. They want it. They want to get their property sold too. This is a great tool for us. So the seller is representing that they're not under notice of default. They don't know of any notice of default recorded against the properties, and they're not delinquent on loans or anything of that, or obligations affecting the property. So that's a seller representation that they are making to us. And we're going to exercise reasonable effort and due diligence to achieve the purpose of this agreement. So when you take, when we are honored and enough that somebody trusts us, we want to get on it, get your professional pictures, get your flyers made, get your open house scheduled. And remember, when you're scheduling an open house, make sure you let Denise from the Alhambra office know, or Perla from the Arcadia office. Make sure that they put that on the listing. And there's a box on the MLS that they will check that says public, and it should hit the internet. So do that a few days in advance. Go ahead and Google your property and make sure that you yourself are seeing that that internet is showing your open house. So you want to make sure you're doing your open house postings a few days in advance. This again is saying that we're under fair housing and discrimination advisory. We've already had the seller sign that. So the seller instructs the broker to present buyer letters. I don't check this, because what this is saying is it's kind of tied into the fair housing, and Peter could probably address this a little more in depth if anybody has a question than me. But if a seller wants buyer letters, sometimes they have pictures of themselves. So and other information that is information about protected classes or characteristics, and should not be used in the seller's decision about an offer. As a listing agent, I really don't want those letters. I don't want them because I want it to be very, it's about the green, it's about the money, it's about who's the best qualified candidate to purchase that property. So I don't recommend that we get buyer letters, because we want to steer clear of anything that this paragraph is outlining. So I never have and never will check that that box unless the seller is insisting. But it's probably best not to have it checked unless the seller absolutely insists on that. And the seller agrees to consider offers presented by the broker and to act in good faith to accomplish the sale of the property by, among other things, making the property available for showing at reasonable times. Okay, so here on the investigation and reports, the seller agrees within, it's 5 days at fallout, but you could put 2 days, 3 days, or 10, 15 days at the beginning date of this agreement to order when required by the service provider. I always order the natural hazard up front. You know that it doesn't cost the seller at the beginning. And in fact, if you order from our provider, like I order from Snap and HD or some other ones, they don't have to pay until this house closes, this property closes in escrow. So no harm in getting the natural hazard up front. Maybe you want to have pest control up front. Maybe you want to know when people are asking for section 1 to be complete in their offers. Maybe you want to know what that is. Maybe you don't. But if that's the case, then you go ahead and check this box if you're going to ask the seller to do that up front, so you have a report. That doesn't mean that the seller has to, that's a negotiating point. It doesn't mean that they have to pay for the pest control, but if you have the report, that is now a disclosure to your buyer. Preliminary title report, again, always order this up front so that you have it to look at all the liens, to go over it with the title officer to make sure if there's anything in that preliminary title report, you're discussing it with the seller and you can head off any issues just in case. And the other thing that comes with your preliminary title report towards the back, excuse me, is the confidential information sheet for the seller to sign out, to fill out. Excuse me, it really doesn't hurt to get that done early, to pull that out of the package when you're doing your disclosures with them. Have them fill that out early, because if they have a really common name, like, I don't know, Sally, Smith, if they have very common names, make sure that they're filling out that confidentiality information statement and get that turned into title. Well, escrow will turn it in. You can turn it into your escrow officer and they'll turn it into title, so they can start running that name. And if there's anything that pops up and it's not your seller's issue, then they can start taking care of that well in advance. So even before I'm in escrow, I've already had that form filled out by my seller. I've turned it into the escrow company. If you haven't selected an escrow company, or your seller, isn't going to agree on that escrow company, go ahead and turn it directly into your title officer so they can clear that. Okay. Seller further agrees to indemnify, defend, and hold broker harmless from all claims, disputes, litigation, judgments, attorney fee, costs arising from any incorrect or incomplete information supplied by the seller, or material facts that the seller knows but fails to disclose. So when you're filling out your MLS input form, take that to the seller and let them initial it, have it filled out, do as well as you can with the information that you already have on the description. You can handwrite a description with the seller while you're there, and have them initial your sheet where you wrote that. So you want them to be as involved as possible in disclosing items about the house that the MLS input form is asking. So make sure that they are initialing and signing that form. You can bring it right with your listing. You can have it filled out. They'll think you're really on top of things and it looks nice. So go ahead and make sure you're doing that, because we want to protect ourselves in this paragraph here. The seller has already acknowledged that they are receiving our AD form, our agency relationship form. So that's a pre-checked box. And then it's also talking about the possible dual agency with the buyer here. And broker shall confirm the agency relationships confirmed above or as modified in writing. So on the front page of the offer, it shows who the broker is. for the listing agent, it shows the listing agent's name. And below that, it's going to show the selling agent's brokerage as well as the selling agent's name. You're going to put in our brokerage 01121690 and your DRE number, agents. And so make sure that's filled out correctly so that the confirmation of agency relationship is correct. If that is not done, then we're gonna need to do another form to correct that and have everybody sign it. So make sure that you have all of the appropriate brokers in there. And just remember, as we talked about, and we all know, just want to say it, if it's Coldwell Banker George, and it's two different agents, remember we are still dual and need to, remember that we're still a dual if it's two agents from our office, okay? So the broker, we're not responsible for loss or damage or personal property, whether it's attributable, oh, that word gets me, to the use of a key safe lockbox, a showing of the property or otherwise. So when we're having a lockbox there'll be third parties in there. So make sure that you understand this paragraph, but do try to safeguard the property. Like if you have a vacant house and a lot of agents have been in there, do yourself and your client a favor, please ride over there and, pop the door open and check the locks, check the windows, just do a walk around because they're relying on us too to be their eyes and ears. So if they're not near to that property, I always make sure if I've had a lot of activity there, I'm going to run over there and check it. And the other night I did that and my instinct was correct. The whole back end of the house was open. And I just had this horrible feeling. And I said, I'm running over there. It's 8 o'clock at night. I'm going, I had that instinct that something wasn't right. So make sure that you are covering your sellers. They're relying on you. Just take a little bit of time and roll over there and make sure that things are locked up, especially if you've had a lot of showings. Sometimes agents forget about the, deadbolts and they don't lock it. Okay. So if you have recording equipment in the property, put up those nice signs where, smile or you're on camera. Make sure that if you are marketing a property and showing it, that if they have recording devices, such as cameras, a lot of properties do, just put you can print one off of an internet, make sure that you're putting that up, okay, on the property. I would just maybe put it in the, at the front door and at the back door, but just put a little, paper sign. You don't have to go pay for them, just print one, okay? So key safe lockbox, these are very important because this allows the agents that are members that have the keys to our super lockboxes to enter, as long as we give them permission. If the seller still lives there, or even if they don't and they don't want you to install a key safe, make sure you check this. It'll be a lot more work for you because you're going to need to run to that property and show it, or maybe you do 4 days a week where you'll be showing it. But I recommend that you do provide a super lockbox. Not a key box, with just the code. Make sure you're doing a super lockbox. That way you can manage that lockbox a little easier. With a code box, you can't manage that. So if the seller absolutely does not want a key safe or lockbox, you need to check this and make sure that you don't do that. Okay. So if we have tenants in that property and it's not, the seller's not occupying it, the seller is responsible for obtaining the occupant's written permission for use of a key safe lockbox. So remember, if there's tenants there, there's a second check to this. You got to make sure that the seller notifies those tenants. And if they're not going to authorize it, then we don't do that. So the seller authorizes the broker to install a for sale sold sign on the property, or if check does not, usually on SFRs, I've seen most of the time they're going to allow you to put a sign. Now, The ones that won't, maybe it's a 3 or 4 unit property and they don't really want to have that out in front and let the tenants know right away. They will know pretty quick if it hits the internet, however. But if the seller does not want to sign there for whatever reason, make sure that you are checking that box. Equal opportunity housing. The property is offered in compliance with all federal, state, and local anti-discrimination laws. Okay. Attorney fees in any action, proceeding, or arbitration between seller and broker to enforce compensation provisions of this agreement, the prevailing seller or broker shall be entitled to reasonable attorney fees and costs from the non-prevailing seller or broker, except as provided in 22A. So this is about dispute resolution and mediation, that we're agreeing to mediate the disputes. Okay. Entire agreement. Nothing that we've said verbally is part of this agreement unless it's written in this agreement. So all prior discussions, negotiations, agreements between the parties should be written in this agreement if we've done that. But of course, we don't make promises even verbally that, you know, we don't want to keep or we're not going to do. I know that we don't do that, but anything that's in the agreement is the agreement. No prior discussions or negotiations apply. So the seller warrants that they have the title and authority to sell this property and execute this agreement and continue on to the sale. If there's any exceptions to the ownership, title, and authority, the seller would list it here. I'm not sure what those would be. Maybe Peter would have an idea. I don't know. It could be a divorce case. I'm not sure. I've never seen anything written here, because when you're taking a listing agreement out, you do want to make sure that you're dealing with all individuals that have the authority to execute on this agreement. Now, if it's a representative capacity, excuse me, check the box. That's for entities. So if it's an LLC, a corporation, and there is somebody signing on their behalf, yes, it needs to be a person signing. So let's say it's Mickey Moore. He's signing for, an LLC. So we need to make sure if somebody is signing on behalf of an entity, that you are checking this box and adding that form to your package. Okay, so here, congratulations, you've gotten your listing. The seller's going to sign and date. Make sure they're filling all this information out here for our record as well. Sign and date and insert your DRE number here. Make sure that everything is signed. Roll through it one more time while you're there, and check it and make sure before you leave that you have everything signed. This is an exciting day when this is all signed. Now, if you were working with another broker from a different company, you would need to check this box and it would automatically populate the correct form for that. Okay. So a real estate broker, right down in here in the little disclosure, is the person qualified to advise on real estate transactions. If you desire legal or tax advice, consult the appropriate personnel. It's really nice how CAR has put these little reminders in for us and the disclosures for the party signing this agreement. So here you're gonna, the form will automatically populate with the seller's advisory, and it goes over getting the property ready, statutory duties, if there was a death on the property. So this is something that we should be reading and understanding a little bit. We're going to disclose if it's a condominium. So the seller's going to initial. Make sure you put the date in. That doesn't, I've noticed that that's not always going to populate. So make sure that you're putting the date in on the top of some of these forms. Okay, and then the seller's going to sign and date. The agent's going to sign it and put it in their file. And the other form that auto populates is the Consumer Privacy Act advisory. It tells the signer that they can obtain more information about the CCPA and the rights under this link. So go ahead and if they have a ton of questions on this, go ahead and have them look it up on the link. The seller's going to sign and date, and that is the end of your package. Of course, that's not the end of your disclosures. We went over the disclosure package. You will be submitting disclosures that are due on a single family property to your client. So make sure that you are ready and you've got your your disclosures ready. I usually have them ready within the first 3 to 5 days. You want to get them over as quickly as possible. And if there's anything in your disclosures that you don't know how to fill out, or you're a newer agent and you need help, be sure and come ask. We're happy to help you get those ready for the seller to complete. Some people are able to get all that done at the listing appointment. If you're not, make sure you're making another appointment right away and get those disclosures done within a couple of days with the seller. Maybe it's late at night and their attention span is they're done. They've been up listening. So go ahead and make sure you have your disclosure package with you. You can ask them, do you have time to go over this now? If not, what time works for you tomorrow, 4 or 5 p.m. So make sure that you're ready. You have everything with you. Give them the choice if they still have time to go over it. Your most important step in is getting your listing agreement signed. You can get all of your disclosures done within a day or two. Okay, so I'm going to open it up to Peter's comments and any comments from the agents.
Thank you, Michelle. I do have some comments. The first one is regarding the disclosure in the MLS. You are required to disclose how much what's the commission, the percentage you're to the cooperating broker. You cannot leave it blank, or you cannot be leaving it ambiguous. So it must be very discreet and clear. And then when you are a cooperating broker, you have to make sure that you understand what the other listing broker is offering as a cooperating broker commission, because sometimes it's a little tricky. They say, well, the commission is 3%. If you belong to the same, Kern County, say, for example, Kern County board, but if you don't belong to the Kern County board, then there's a different percentage. So you have to make sure that before you procure your buyer and get the selling commissions. Now, the second comment I have is for the excluded items that you have put in the listing agreement, you make sure that you put the same excluded item in the residential purchase agreement, because the excluded item in the listing agreement is not automatically posted in the purchase agreement. And as you know, that the listing agreement is the contract between the seller and the listing broker and has nothing to do with the buyer. So when you listed the excluded item in the listing agreement, make sure that is also mentioned in the purchase agreement. That's very important. And also the lien item, as Michelle mentioned, the solar panel is very, very important, because some of the solar panel contracts, they are not assumable. They require the owner to satisfy the contract or pay off the contract before they sell the property. So that's very important. If that is the case, then it will be a surprise to both parties when you are, when you're trying to close escrow and they say, oh, wow, that's a dispute on who's supposed to be taking care of the solar panel. So that is very, very important. And remember that the solar contract is a lien on the property. It goes with the property. So you have to make sure that it's really taken care of before you close escrow. Otherwise, you have a big lawsuit later on and say, hey, I don't know that. I didn't know that it was on my property. Then at that time, it'll be very problematic. And also have comments on the coming soon. So when you are not ready to market your property and you want to put it in the coming soon, you have to be careful too. You have to know that the coming soon is only for a limited period of time. And after 21 days, it will be automatically become active unless you do some arrangement otherwise. So that is important to know as well. And lastly, as Michelle mentioned about the buyer's letter, those are what we call the love letter from the buyers. It's getting more popular because now the buyers want to have a certain advantage when they come to present their offer. So they want to emphasize their good points and make sure and influence the seller to sell it to them. But you have to be very, very careful because sometimes you get into the pretext of discrimination, and then you get into that situation, and that is not good. But anyway, I discourage my clients to not to write those buyer's letter just for that reason, because it might get you into trouble. And plus, sometimes you might have opposite effect anyway, so and then, but if you do want to write the love letters, be sure that you consult your legal counsel, make sure that everything is proper in there. Okay, so that's all my comments. Thank you, Michelle.
Oh, thank you. Does anybody have any comments or questions?
Not at the moment.
Do we
Okay.
have question on the chats? Let's check the chats, Michelle.
Okay.
Any fan?
Yeah, you got it? Can you see it, Peter?
Yeah, I got it.
Okay, go ahead.
So many agents out there, they do the photos, video, live video on their YouTube, link, Facebook, and what's that?
LinkedIn.
LinkedIn, yeah, Instagram or social media. Can we do the same like them? Well, just a precaution. When you do them, you can do that. This is a matter of how you market it, but you have to be careful and not run into a discrimination or false advertisement, things like that.
Any other?
Doesn't the social media stuff that we post, isn't that, because I've noticed that we were talking about checking that one box about internet stuff, social media and all that.
Yeah.
Doesn't that fall under that category? Peter?
Yeah, this is under the social media. Yes. So
Got it.
you could do that. You can do that. A lot of people are doing that, but you have to be careful too. You make sure that you're not doing false advertisement or misrepresentation or things like that.
Got it.
Mm-hmm.
I have a question. This is Nanette.
Hi, Lynette.
Hi. Michelle, earlier you mentioned something about check if it's an out of county or out of area for the commission, to check just to make sure that we are compensated the same as an
Peter mentioned that. I was mentioning about make sure that other board will cooperate and put your listing up. That's really important because we just went through that yesterday or the day before.
Yeah.
But Peter can address the commission part. That was him.
Yeah. Sometimes they will say that the commission, if you belongs to the same board, the commission is 1%, but otherwise it's negotiable. So you make sure that that you negotiate the right percentage if you don't belong to the same board.
Okay. And so when you say make sure, do we make sure with the agent, or we make sure with the board?
No. With the listing agent.
Okay, so just make sure with them.
Right.
Any other questions? Let me see the chat box.
Well, Michelle, this is Clint. I have a question for you. Michelle?
Yes, I hear you.
We're going to the 2 o'clock this afternoon. The class you're offering is going to be on internet, on Zoom or it's going to be on class in person?
Okay, so we'll probably do this every couple of weeks or monthly, depending on what people need, but we're gonna Zoom it as well. But the problem with Zooming this type of classes, you know, unless you can follow along, get on your car forms.
Right.
And I'm gonna be the buyer. I'm gonna write on the whiteboard what I want. And then I would like everybody to write the offer based on me, Michelle
Right.
Olson, buyer. So if you can follow along on the computer, we are Zooming it. And then the other thing that we'll be talking about, and I'm gonna put that at the top of the meeting, I'm gonna flip how I'm gonna do it, is we're gonna be talking about prospecting for, you know, a half hour and
Right.
what people are finding works for them, some suggestions, you know, masterminding a little bit on that. And then we're
Right.
gonna go right into, we're all gonna be writing a purchase offer, a purchase agreement, and I'll be your buyer. So if you can
Right.
link in on your computer, please, by all means, because we are Zooming it as well.
Okay, so you'll send what you call that, a link, right?
Did you not get the link? Because I think Edgar sent it out.
Yeah,
Just-
they sent it out twice already. I remind.
I know. I just want to make sure there's a link. That's all.
Yeah, there
that's
is.
it.
Yeah. So please, by all means, join and we can all write an offer together.
And that the session is recorded. It's going to be recorded, right, Michelle?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, thanks so much.
Yeah, thank you. I look forward to seeing you.
Okay.
Let me find, Kenny, are you asking for the commission? Commission agreement, is that what you're asking, Kenny? I think. Let me add it and pull it up. Full screen it. So here's the commission agreement that if you're, that Peter's talking about, make sure. So I've seen agents submit this with their offers. So you can go ahead and take a look at the commission agreement and submit that. But we do honor what we put on the MLS, but like he said, that doesn't mean outside MLSs do. So I think this is what you're asking, Kenny.
No, I asking about when we do the social media, you know, when we took the photo and we knew the video on the YouTube and Facebook, you know, so.
Yeah, make sure the photos are authentic. You know, you don't use other people's photos. Make sure
Yeah,
the photos that is taken by you or by authorized somebody authorized you to take the photos.
I mean, sometimes we take the photo with the client, you know, the buyer, the seller together. So.
Oh, you mean when they close the transaction?
Yes.
I guess if they're in agreement, I don't know, Peter.
I don't know what this should be referring to.
He puts the seller and buyer at the close of escrow in front of the property, and they agree to take a picture together, and then he puts it on his social media with those people in the picture.
Yes, that's true. Yes.
Yeah,
And
I guess it's okay. You take the picture and then you have the permission of the buyer and seller to take it with them.
can we do the video? I mean, yes, the video live stream. Yes.
You mean with the clients?
Yes.
I think if they're agreeable, what's your thought,
Yeah,
Peter?
if it's agreeable, it's okay.
But do we need let them decide any addendum, you know, if they agree, you know, in case, you know, in the future and they cannot go back to us and they say, okay.
Well,
you know.
you just have a simple agreement with them saying that they approve the pictures to be taken or the video to be taken. Very simple agreement, that's all.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
That's a good question, Kenny. Really good, really thoughtful.
Yeah, I know because I saw a lot of agents and out there, you know, and they did like that, you know.
Yeah.
So, and if we did not do like that and we, you know, stay behind the wheel.
Oh, Nancy's got a question.
Yeah,
for you, Peter.
Is it okay to take the pictures from the computer? You have to know where the pictures come from. So, sometimes, sometimes what is posted in the computer belongs to somebody else. That's why you have to be very careful. You have to know the origin of the picture.
Peter, I just wanted to make a comment on what you just said. That is so true, because I work for a television station, and whenever we get a picture from a social media website, we can't use it until we get
You don't know the origin.
permission from that person. So, and we have to find out where it's from and who it's from, or if
Yeah.
it's a third party, and if not, then we can't use it. And yeah, it totally makes sense.
Yeah, right. Yeah, we just got a lawsuit from somebody saying that we took their picture, used their picture without their authorization, and we have to settle them with $3,500 just for that. So be careful.
And also just to add to that, like if you posted somebody else's picture
Mhm.
on MLS, it could be from another listing, or I'm not sure if it would be also from just the internet. Someone found that out and said that,
Yeah.
oh, that's my picture. There's a fine from MLS too.
Yes,
Mhm.
this
It's
is
a pretty
right.
hefty fine from MLS violation.
And also if you post your own picture in the MLS, and then later on you want to use that picture again, but you took the pictures from the MLS listing itself, you know, they have a way of tagging the picture so that when it appears on the MLS, it already have a little mark on that. So if you use the picture to do another listing again, that is a violation of MLS as well, and that could be a hefty fine also. Be very careful. Right, Michelle?
Yeah, we've been there.
Got
Yeah.
into trouble like that before.
Yes. It's 1,500, by the way, the fine.
Yeah, $1,500.
Any other, I see another. Yeah, Christine just typed that, the 1,500. Yes, Christine, you're right.
Right. Yeah.
So
Oh,
you had a residential purchase agreement class at 2? I thought I saw that. I thought that was today.
Yes,
for this
today.
meeting.
Today at
So I
2
didn't
o'clock,
see
and
that.
then another one at 3:30, right, Michelle?
No, that was a mistake that Edgar corrected. The class is scheduled to run from 2 to 3:30.
The 3:30.
So we're
Okay.
gonna write an offer today.
Yeah.
It's gonna be a lot of fun. I'll have blank copies in there and we're gonna all write an offer.
Okay,
Yeah.
so any questions about the
Michelle, just
purchase
checked.
contract?
Michelle, I just checked the email that Edgar sent out. There's no link.
There isn't?
There isn't.
Okay, let me
You just
get
mentioned
that
2 o'clock.
addressed right
You will
now.
offer the class, but there's no link.
Okay, I'm gonna get that addressed right now.